All right, welcome everyone to our Resource YYC Lunch and Learn. So that you're aware, Resource YYC is a co-working community geared to professionals. We offer our lunch and learn sessions as a means for our community to network and provide meaningful learning opportunities. We also provide private office spaces, dedicated desks, day drop-ins, and virtual office options. If you're not yet a member with us, we encourage you to check out our website and follow us on social media. Links will be posted in the chat. Today we have Ayako Ohtake, who is a transformation consultant with Brave Bird Studios, who works with organizations to achieve competitive advantage by helping teams become healthy and creating organizational clarity. Over to you, Ayako.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for everyone for joining me today. We've got a small group, but that's okay. So if you've got questions, feel free to put them in the chat or to stop and interrupt me. I'm okay with that. So I'll just give you a bit of my background. So as Rosemary mentioned, I have a background in communications and I have a background also in change management. So the work that I'm going to talk to you about today, I actually came to understand about this and learn more about it because when I was doing work in change management, a lot of the things I'm going to talk to you were barriers for me, right? And so today we're going to talk about something that's applicable to teams, but that's just kind of a bit of background about me and why I'm interested in this. So I do work with Brave Bird Studios. In addition to that, I also work with a group called the Table Group. So if anyone has read the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, that's authored by a guy named Patrick Lancioni, and I work with Pat's consultant group. So there's about 400 or 500 of us, I think, throughout the world. And so this is one of the newest models that Pat Lancioni has put out. So there isn't a book on this yet. Everyone's getting a preview before everyone else about the 6 types of working genius. We're really excited about this model. It seems to be having a transformative impact to teams. And so we've got consultants working with some of the Fortune 100 companies, and it's really making an impact and a difference to the work that they're doing. Okay. So today I'm just going to go through and give you a bit of context and talk about those 4 disciplines of a healthy organization. I'm going to go through the 6 types of working genius. We're going to talk a bit about application and then also about commitments. So how you might be able to leverage the 6 types of working genius in the work that you're doing. So there's really 4 disciplines needed for a healthy organization. So we find that a lot of organizations are what we call smart. They're great at finance and technology and strategy and marketing. But where I found a lot of organizations struggle is around what we call the healthy side. So that's things like minimal politics. There's a lot of silos in organizations, lack of clarity, lack of leadership alignment. And so the model that we use addresses how to make organizations healthier with these 4 disciplines. And I'll go through them really quickly. The first discipline is building a cohesive leadership team. And so this is really making sure that the leadership team is aligned with 5 critical behaviors, right? And it starts with things like trust, in order that teams are able to have good conflict, in order that they're able to commit to decisions, to then be able to hold each other accountable, to then be able to achieve results for the organization. And so the 6 types of working genius fits into what we're going to talk about in terms of building cohesive teams. The second discipline is around creating clarity within the organization. And that's doing and answering 6 critical questions. Things like, why do we exist? And how do we behave? And what's most important right now? And once we create that clarity, it's really up to the leaders of the organization to communicate that clarity. And we like to say that leaders need to be the chief reminding officers, to be going and explaining to employees in different ways all the time the answers to those clarity questions. And then the 4th discipline is really around reinforcing that clarity. And that comes in through how we have meetings, how we hire, how we manage, how we take care of performance in the organization. So that's really the 4th discipline. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics right now, which is the 6 types of working genius. So again, I mentioned this is a brand new model. There's no book on this yet, so everyone's getting a sneak peek preview. A book will probably come out late summer, early fall. But essentially, in order for teams to get work done, we have 6 types of working genius, and I'll go through all of these in detail, but they really all have to work together for teams to get work done. So there's wonder, there's invention, there's discernment, there's galvanizing, enablement, and tenacity. And so essentially everybody has 2 that are a genius, so that gives them energy. 2 that are a competency. It doesn't necessarily drain their energy, but doing the work doesn't also energize them. And 2 are a frustration. And those frustrations tend to drain us of our energy, right? So think about it like a cup of coffee. Your geniuses are, you've got a hot cup of coffee and it's in a thermos, and it's going to retain that heat for a really long time. Then you've got just a cup of coffee and it's in a mug, and it's going to, hold that heat for a little bit, your competencies, right? But eventually it's going to lose its energy and its heat. And then you've got a cup of coffee and it's got a hole in the bottom and it's draining out all of the coffee from the cup. So that's like a frustration. It drains you of your energy. Okay, so I'm now just going to go through each of them and give a brief description of them. So there's the genius of wonder. And those are the people who really love to ponder ideas. They can see risks and opportunities. They can spend hours and hours just really deeply thinking about a problem or a situation. There's people who have the genius of invention. And those are the people who are naturally gifted at coming up with new ideas. Think of somebody like Elon Musk. So he is absolutely somebody who has the genius of invention. He's coming up with new ideas all the time. Sometimes he's inventing things that maybe don't even need to be fixed, but he has the genius of invention. Then there's the genius of discernment. And those are the people we like to talk about as having gut feel, right? They're naturally gifted at being able to evaluate a situation or idea. And then we have galvanizing. And those are the people who are just naturally gifted at being able to rally and inspire others in the organization. They're able to get everybody to take action. And then there's enablement. And so those people actually help. So they lend their hands, or they might say, oh, I have somebody who can help you with this. And they're the ones that really provide a lot of encouragement and assistance for an idea or for a project. And then there's tenacity. And these folks are naturally gifted at pushing something to the end. They're able to complete a task. So there's tenacity. And so now I'm just going to talk about how this plays into how we work. And so we talk about the 3 phases of work, right? So there's this initial phase, which is wonder and invention. And that's really the ideation phase of work. So that's coming up with ideas, coming up with those solutions. We then have the activation stage of work. So that's discernment and galvanizing. And then we have the implementation stage of work. And that's enablement and tenacity. So we've had a lot of stories come back as our consultants are going out and working with organizations. Sorry, I just have something in my throat. And one of the organizations was actually, excuse me, was Nike. And they realized that they were doing this first bit, which is wonder and invention. They're actually skipping the middle bit, which is discernment and galvanizing. And then they were just putting out their ideas and doing the enablement tenacity piece. And they realized they were putting out products that weren't very good because they were skipping this middle phase of discernment and galvanizing. So that's one way that it's manifesting in organizations. And understanding that then helps them realize that they need to go back and not skip this really important critical middle piece, right, of discernment and galvanizing. So I think we'll just talk a bit about how this is helping teams. And I think there's really 5 critical things of how this is helping teams and helping us as we think about doing work. And so the 6 types of working genius are really, if you think about it, about 20% personality, right? and about 80% productivity. So this is really about how we're getting work done. And so knowing the 6 types of working genius really helps us to understand projects that have gone well in the past. We can make adjustments as we go forward and do new projects to then try to replicate what worked well. Another really helpful thing is that it helps us to avoid making unfair and inaccurate judgments about others, right? So we may jump to the conclusion that someone's just not able to get something done, but it gives us language to say, oh, this person actually is lacking in tenacity. And so that's a working frustration for them. They're unable to finish that because that's part of what drains their energy. And it helps us to alleviate guilt about ourselves in the areas that we struggle in. So, somebody who doesn't have the genius of invention may feel guilty that they're not coming up with new ideas or not helping the team with solutions. So it really helps us to avoid feeling guilty about some of our strengths and weaknesses. And another impact that it's having is to help make adjustments within the team to pull in things that might be missing. So a friend of mine, her name is Deborah, she was working with an executive team and they realized that they were missing discernment on this team. So recognizing that no one had the genius of discernment, they were actually able to go and elevate somebody lower into the organization to work with the executive team to make a decision. And just that one change allowed them to save $500,000 in the organization. So that's just one change of having a person who had discernment join the executive team to help make a decision, and it ended up saving $500,000. So at a time when I know that organizations are thinking a lot about costs, that's just one example of how it's helping. And of course, it's also helping us get more things done in less time. So I think everyone feels short on time. We might feel short on resources. So I think that's really critical right now. So I want to just talk a bit about responsive versus disruptive. So there's 3 geniuses that we consider responsive. So there's wonder, discernment, and enablement. So they respond to other geniuses or to something in the environment. And then you'll notice that there's 3 that are disruptive. So invention, galvanizing, and tenacity. Those are disruptive, meaning they enforce their will or their genius into the world. So understanding this really helps us to just be aware of how we show up and how others may perceive us. Okay, so I think one of the critical ways that it's helping teams as well is to understand how the 6 types of working genius show up in meetings. So this also helps us to have effective meetings. So wonder and invention, those people love those brainstorming meetings. They're always coming up with ideas. They're wondering, it's that 50,000 foot view. And so they're really great in those brainstorming meetings. And they love that. That gives them energy. You have folks with invention and discernment, and they're really great in those topical meetings because they can invent those new ideas and discern those new ideas to see if they're actually going to work and make a good solution. Then we often attend tactical meetings. The galvanizers, the enablers, and the people with tenacity, they're great in those meetings, those tactical meetings. And then we've got those task-oriented meetings, and our discerner folks and our tenacity folks love those meetings. So those are those daily stand-up meetings where it's task-oriented. We could talk about what needs to be done. So that's how it shows up in meetings. But another really great thing in terms of our awareness is to understand that we generally gravitate towards our own genius. So for instance, for me, it's wondering. And so there are appropriate times to bring that genius and not bring that genius. So for instance, if something is a project is implementing, and let's say it's implemented next week, then I shouldn't be at the meeting going, I wonder if this is the right thing to do, or, oh, maybe we should do this thing at the last minute that's a completely new idea. So I think it's good to understand when it's appropriate for us to bring our geniuses to the meetings, or understanding this helps us know who we need to have in a meeting. So in a brainstorming meeting, it's really critical for us to have those inventors because they're the ones coming up with those solutions and those ideas. Or to recognize that if you're managing somebody and they love tenacity, then they might need those daily stand-up meetings because they want to be on track. They want to know that what are we going to do to get this done by Friday? And they like to keep on top of that. So that's how it shows up in meetings. And so I'm just going to talk a bit about the altitude of genius. And so I think I mentioned this before, but you can think of wonder, and that's that 30,000 foot view of things. But of course, as you go down all the way to tenacity, we need to land the plane 50 feet off the ground, and the plane's going to get landed in 2 minutes, right? So we can think of it as kind of going down and landing a plane, right? But this is helpful to know this because what we like to talk about is sometimes there's turbulence that happens, and it often shows up in meetings. So you'll be in a brainstorming meeting and you're at that 30,000 foot wondering view of things. And then somebody all of a sudden says, oh, but what are we going to do to get this done by next week? And that causes what we call turbulence in the meeting because you're switching gears from looking at it from 30,000 feet to all of a sudden in a tactical 50 feet off the ground phase. So just understanding that there's different altitudes of this genius really helps us in meetings as well to say, oh, actually, we're not at tenacity yet. We're still at the wondering and invention phase. So that's how it shows up. And I just want to talk a bit about what I call the gap analysis, right? And this is how it shows up on a team if certain things are missing. So with wonder, how it's showing up is that teams are missing big opportunities. So if they're not taking the time to step back, they're actually missing opportunities or they're not identifying problems. If invention is missing, they're actually not coming up with new ideas. So they're just recycling the same things over and over again, and they're not actually changing anything. And so in a competitive environment, those people could actually be out of business very quickly if they're not able to innovate. Discernment, and I think I shared an example about discernment, but then they're surprised by failures because there hasn't been anyone doing that critical discerning step to make sure that the ideas that the wonder and inventors have are actually the right ideas. And so they're not evaluating, they're not refining any of their ideas, and so it's just not getting off the ground. If a team is missing galvanizing, they're actually failing to inspire others, or they just can't get enough traction. They can't get people excited enough to get the momentum around a new idea or an initiative, and it's just not getting traction. And enablement as well. If a team is missing enablement, they're really lacking that help and support that's needed in order to get the project or the work on the team done. And if a team is missing tenacity, then they're unfortunately not able to finish or complete a project. So that's just a little bit of how it manifests on a team. So I just wanted to put it out to folks. Are there any questions or any thoughts on this model or how it can be used or how it would apply to work? Barb, do you have any thoughts? No? Okay. Well, I wanted this to be more of a discussion. So I just want to talk about what are like 3 ways you could apply this to work. Anybody have thoughts there? How could we apply this to work?
Well, it's kind of like how you were saying before, getting the project kind of off the ground in some ways, you know, from that 30,000 view to the going down to the runway. So from thinking about a project to how it'll actually be implemented is always important.
Yeah. And so we're finding that we really need to have all of these on a team represented in order to get work done. And if things aren't represented well in a team, it also gives us that understanding to realize why things have failed. So I'll just give myself as an example. I went back and I thought about some of the project teams that I've worked on. And the last project team that I worked on was fantastic. We worked on a project at the University of Alberta, and we had a fantastic team. And when I thought about it, when I stepped back and just noticed, we had all of these represented. So we had our project manager, and she was great at keeping us on task, and she had daily stand-ups with us. And so she was absolutely bringing tenacity. We had another person on the team, and she was fantastic with coming up with solutions and ideas. Myself, I was the galvanizer, got everyone excited. We had other folks on the team who were really great at lending a hand and support. And so that's just one example of how it really does make a difference to teams. So that's really all I had, unless there are other questions. Barb, did you have anything?
No comments on the chat.
Great. Well, I guess with that, then I just
got
want
a
to
no in the chat.
all right, no questions. Great. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. So that's all I had. So this is a really kind of quick overview of the six types of working genius. And I know for the teams that we've worked with, it's really had a huge impact and transformed teams. And I hope that everyone has learned something that they might be able to apply that'll help them in their work. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ayako. It was really interesting.
Good.
Definitely a different way to think about team structures.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, everyone have a great day. Take care.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.